Alright, the Reds, it is Talking Reds, and with me this morning I have got Si Hughes from The Athletic. We're going to talk a bit about Marine, a bit about the Reds. And Si, you were at Marine v Spurs. Anyone who doesn't know, Si is the man about Marine. He has been a mascot for the club, he has reported on the club, and you were behind the scenes yesterday, mate, so how was it for you?
Yeah, it was a good week really, because I managed to spend quite a bit of time with the players and the staff and a lot of other people behind the club, obviously from a safe social distance and everything else. But it's the first time really since the pandemic started that you've actually been able to go out and do stuff sort of face to face again from a safe distance because of everything going on. Marine had the all important COVID tests on Thursday night. The results came through overnight, Friday, Saturday. So you were having to be obviously very, very careful throughout all this. But it was just nice to be out and seeing people and interviewing people again, because you forget how important that is, when you're trying to do the job. Like the last sort of 12 months, really, it's all been done from home and over the phone. And I do think you lose a bit when you're trying to do that. So it was great just to feel back in a sort of a football environment. I love doing those sort of behind the scenes things. I've done a few of them before where you go away with the team for the weekend and you just get to speak to people and learn a bit more about people and the motivations. And the thing that I came away from it really realising was that, okay, like Marina, obviously that the story about the butcher, baker, candlestick maker, that's all out there. Everybody knows that that they've all got full-time jobs outside of the part-time football. But, there is professional in every other sense as they can be. I know they're obviously playing Tottenham and it's a massive game, but the attention to detail and the planning that goes into it in terms of, from the sporting side with the manager, the tactical preparation, everything, nothing's left to chance. And it really opened my eyes and made me realise just how, certainly at this non-league club, it's sort of, it's playing below where it should be at, really, according to the manager that you've got. And I think that's reflected, and the players that you've got, of course, but I think that's reflected by the fact that they've got to play Tottenham. They haven't beaten Colchester, haven't Chester by chance. They've got there by planning and knowing exactly what they're doing. And in 25 minutes of the game, it almost, it worked for them. But at the end of the day, if you're playing against Tottenham and there's a level of quality on the pitch, you can only do it for so long, I think, because I said to you before, just off camera, standing a couple of yards away from the Tottenham players down the side of the pitch, and it's so quick, the way they bop the ball about, it's just frightening. Like, I think when you go to Liverpool matches, or Everton matches or whatever match, and you're sort of a bit closer to the action, you don't realise how quick they're doing it because they're both doing it. But when it's like the difference is Marine, who are 8 leagues below Tottenham, you realise it a lot more. And Marine did as much as they could and were as fit as they could. And the one thing that I just found really funny at the end of it was there's only one player that went in the whole game that went down with cramp, and it was a Tottenham player. Been training all week, Gedson Fernandes for the second half. I was like, mate, you've had all the preparation that you possibly need, and he played well, of course. But yeah, it was a really interesting, insightful week. Really, I really enjoyed it. And I mean, if Marina had, by some miracle, pulled off a result, it would have been the greatest shock in the history of football, as far as I'm concerned, given what you were up against. But I thought they actually did really well and showed in the game that that they weren't there just by chance. They had a plan. They tried to stick to it. Ultimately, you're coming up against world-class opponents, players who've scored hat-tricks in Champions League semi-finals, players who scored an overhead kick in a Champions League final. Let's not forget, he comes on when they're 5-0 down after 60 minutes. Just what chance have you got?
Yeah, there was loads of surreal moments, wasn't there, Si? And I know you're obviously close to people at the club, and like I say, you've been in and around it for a long time. I know your Alfella's a big fan as well. Did you have any moments like sort of where you're just like, this is I mean, the one for me was, you referenced it there, I was obviously watching it at home, but I've been down there enough times myself. When they're taking off Dele Alli and bringing on Gareth Bale, who was once 90 million quid's worth of footy player, and he's kicking around at Rossett Park. It's like, this is mad.
It was mad. It was surreal. I mean, I was watching Dele Alli warm up, yards away, and you sort of have an impression of players, don't you? When you see them mainly on TV or from a distance in the stand, I suppose. But close up, he was enormous.
Yeah.
You know, it was like, and then when Bale came on, I was like, I don't know whether he is 6'3", but he looked about 6'8". You know, he was just. I spoke to one of the Marine players, Jay Devine. He was running about trying to catch Dele Alli all the way through the game until Bale came on. And when Bale came on, he said to him, he just said to Bale, he said, "What are you doing here, lads? You know, what are you doing?" And apparently Bale just said to him, "Well, why not?" You know what I mean? And I think that sort of reflected again what they were up against, because Tottenham, you've got to give them a lot of credit.
They were very professional.
Yeah. Treated the game with, again, I mean, I know Mourinho's been big on all that, hasn't he? You know, all the respect and all, but he let's be fair, he was, and treated the tie with the level of significance that it was for Marine. You know, more than anything, I'd say. And it obviously, I've spoken to Neil Young, the manager, quite a lot over the weekend. I spoke to him this morning, and he was telling me about the dossier that Mourinho handed over to him, and you know, it's quite extensive, really. So it just shows you, the Tottenham, these Premier League clubs, the resources that they've got, just incredible, really. You know, like in terms of the lengths they'll go to find out about the Marine players and the Marine team. And I mean, there was that sort of moment, really. I think it's because I haven't been to many football matches, obviously, over the last year. I was just sitting there thinking, "Oh, this is just incredible." And I was thinking a lot about, like, sort of how, you know, you mentioned before, you know, both of our journalistic careers began covering Marine, and thinking about some of the places that you've been to watch the team. Frickley Athletic away on you know, it's the Northern Premier League version of Stoke on a cold Tuesday night. You know what I mean? And to see Marine playing against Tottenham was just incredible. My only wish really was, you know, people say, "Oh, it's great for the people at Crosby and stuff like that," but for me, you know, it's just a shame that the sort of 500 fans who would normally go weren't able to be inside the ground, because I do think when you get like even that relatively small number, it generates a big atmosphere at Marine. It feels like there's a lot more people. You know what it's like, don't you? And you can have that interaction with the players as well. That would have been good to see.
Yeah.
You know, I was trying to get it going by myself, and then I just thought, I'm there in a professional work capacity, so I can't really do too much of that. I was having a go at the liner, like, you know, because he wouldn't give off. He always seemed to be late with his flag. And I said, "Hey, Lan, is your flag broken?" And he just like stared into the middle distance like a robot. You know what I mean? And I thought, best not go too far with some of this. But yeah, it was a fascinating week, really.
Yeah, the other side as well of it, Si, which obviously has, you know, captured a lot of attention, is that, you know, as you say there, Marine wanted a crowd in, then it was a reduced crowd that they were going to have in, then it was nothing as the lockdown came in, and you know, everyone I think sort of looked at it, the teams, and went, you know, that shit, that and sort of football collectively, Spurs fans, but people all over, have come in and bought these virtual tickets and generated an awful lot of money for Marine. And you know, you'll know, I know that, you know, at times the club struggled financially. It certainly struggled, you know, through this pandemic, because it doesn't have, it's all the little things, isn't it? It doesn't have use of the function room. It can't put on weddings, christenings, wakes, whatever else, you know, and all that matters at that level. I mean, you know, I always remember, I put a tweet out yesterday about him, you know, Graham, who used to do the PA, he always used to say, didn't he, you know, go and buy a pie or a sausage roll or some crisps, because it really makes a difference to Marine.
Yeah,
like
crisps and nuts, you always used to say that.
That was
like,
it, yeah.
The last thing you'd hear as the team's trying to finish the game, go and get your crisps and nuts.
But, you know, this must be absolutely huge to them financially for securing the future of the club.
Well, it is. I mean, I would say that Marine are a pretty well-run non-league club. You know, obviously the pandemic's affecting everyone. There's not a company in the world, really, unless you run a big supermarket, that it's affecting everybody. So, but Marine aren't like one of the clubs that I would say have lived beyond the means, you know, over the last 10 years. They've been run very conservatively for quite a long period of time, really. And I think that's been to the detriment in some ways of the success on the pitch. You know, they've had quite a long period of winning nothing, really. And that's not what I sort of grew up watching when I first started going to Marine. There were these cup runs. I mean, obviously been mentioned over the last few weeks, the Crew game, various FA Trophy runs, winning the leagues. That I sort of became like I mentioned this in an article that I wrote when they actually played Colchester. You know, I was a bit of a glory hunting Marine fan in some ways because that's what lured me in. It wasn't like sort of the sense of community that was just there. That wasn't the thing. It was just a part of it all at the time. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, they are a well-run club where the financial situation had been obviously weakened by the pandemic, but not weakened to the extent like it may have done with other clubs. So what this does really is make it more possible for the team to do better on the pitch over a long period of time. Obviously helps with the way they quite clever. I mean, whoever came up with the virtual ticket deserves a massive pat on the back, really.
Paul Leary's lad, I think it
well,
was.
I asked him the other day, and to be fair to him, he wanted to play that down, but it was the work of genius, really, because that alone has secured anything between, it could be anything between minimum anyway of £300,000 a minimum. So on the pitch, I believe that they are going to have a bit more of a go at it, which, I understand, don't get me wrong, I'm all for like sort of the community initiatives and stuff like that they do, but I just still want to go to watch footy as well.
Yeah.
Because of footy. Like I want to watch, a decent game, and I want to like sort of, I'm not saying that I want to watch a sort of high standards of football, but a competitive team. And I think sometimes like, a lot of non-league clubs have been lost in all that a little bit, and Marine might fall into that trap. So hopefully Marine, on the pitch things will improve. The ground, as we've been there, it's a nice, neat ground. It's not the ground of the 1990s when it had, sort of cinder on a little cow shed with a big wooden stand behind one goal. It was just looked quite forbidding, really. It looked quite Victorian, didn't it? Now it's like quite a relatively modern ground. They've made a lot of ground improvements over the last sort of 10 years, really. So that is all in place already in many ways. I mean, if they do want to get up through the leagues, I think there are sort of certain things that they'll need to do to the ground just to make it possible to compete at the higher leagues, because it's obviously quite a tight space, isn't it? It's like sandwiched between two roads of terraced houses, and then at the other end there's another road of terraced houses. So it's a pretty tight space. But all things considered, if we get back to a position where football's being played regularly, if you want to go and watch a team which will play decent football as well, because I think yesterday, obviously, Marine could only do what they could do against Tottenham. When I've seen them over the last sort of 12 months, they've got a really good manager there who knows what he's doing at that level, and I think is really managing below his level at the moment, and could be, he got 3 promotions from the level that Marine are at into the conference not so long ago with Chester. Obviously had a decent budget to do that as well, but you don't just win leagues because of budgets. There's a lot more that goes into it. Yeah. If you're not a good manager, you don't know what you're doing, particularly if you're signing players of any standard at any level who know what they're doing and you don't know what you're doing. You get found out pretty quickly, and he's really good, Neil Young. So yeah, it's looking up for Marine, really. I would hope that the people at Crosby will sort of get down there a bit more and get behind the team and not just let this sort of pay. I mean, it's going to be hard, obviously, because who knows when the footy will start again. But it's been an incredible cup run. They haven't got there by accident. They deserve to be there. And it's just a shame it's over now. I was speaking to Neil Young before, and he just said that, it just feels a bit like, a bit empty now, because there's no matches to prepare for, and you've just prepared for the biggest match in your life.
Yeah, that is a shame. I mean, I presume then that there's a deep dive to come on The Athletic from yourself about all this.
You'd be right about that, yeah. I don't think you're giving too much away there, but it was quite good, really, because, I mean, they were very trusting, of course. I mean, I was with them from Tuesday, so I knew what they were going to try to do from Tuesday. I was aware of some of the things that he was trying to do, like signing another team's manager, you know what I mean, and why he decided to do that pretty early on, and so he was very trusting with information, which at the end of the day, it's Marine's one opportunity to get this level of exposure, so why wouldn't you do it? But it's always nice when you sort of feel like, it reminded me really of those sort of days back when I covered Marine for the Crosby Herald. The last Marine match report, I suppose, that I did was 2006-07, something like that. So you know, it was that sort of process, really building that relationship with the manager, knowing that we can, to some extent, go off into the sunset and not have to piss each other off at any other point. You know, which is
I
quite...
I like some of the stuff from Dave Raver as well. Obviously, I presume he must have done some kind of press conference type situation because his quotes were across the media. But there was one line, and I was like, you know, I was nearly going outside myself and throwing some punch. He said something like, "If you punch them, they'll still bleed," or something like that.
He's good.
Like,
he's got a good way with words, David Draven. You know what I mean?
He's a good lad, isn't he?
He's a really good lad. I know you spoke to him, didn't you?
Yeah.
The rap, and I did a piece with him before they played Havant, before they knocked Havant out. Really good, you know, really thoughtful. But as a way with words, it sort of makes you remember them. You know, he's up for the battle. You know, you can tell he's played professional football for a long time. And I managed, after the game last night, you know, probably about half an hour afterwards, he just walked out from the changing rooms and was on his phone. I just phoned him, came over and had a chat about like sort of how it had been, and he was pretty gutted, to be honest. You know, like I think the professional elements in him, the competitor in him, he was like, you know, I think we could have done better. You know, he was disappointed with the goals that Marina's conceded, and you know, you could sense that disappointment. And he was just saying, like, I was asking about the shirts, obviously, that the Tottenham had donated. He was like, I'm not taking one of them. He was like, you don't want one of them. You know, I was like, well, he says he's never been that sort of player to like sort of live off somebody else's memory, if you know what I mean. He said it's all about what is up there, and you know, he said just because it's a Tottenham player doesn't mean that he's a better person than the Marine lads, you know what I mean, which I thought was quite nice and thoughtful, you know. And he's a really good fella, gave us loads of time over the last few days, and really good player as well. I mean, you see lads now, I mean, non-league football, the landscape of non-league football has changed a lot in the last 20 years, where, you know, it was predominantly played by sort of 30-year-old men, you know, 30 years ago.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Now the age is like sort of 20, 21. Marine's average age is really low. And he's got the appetite to play, and, you know, really good player as well. I mean, I thought, you know, he's up against Lucas Moura, isn't he? I mean, what much... You can't... There's only so much you can do, but, you know, I just thought his appetite for the game, his reading, you know, the way he got his head on the ball. Him and Anthony Miley, the other centre-half, who's from Bootle or Little, and just by Crosby, I thought actually did really well. But in the immediate aftermath of the game, it didn't feel that way for them a little bit. I think they just felt, you know, we could have made it a bit more difficult for them. I think when you concede 4 so quickly, it's shell shock a little bit, isn't it?
Yeah,
He recovered well, I thought.
Yeah, I think they did themselves proud. I think they can be really proud, and I think most people in Merseyside are proud of them right now. Si, before you go, I know some people will be watching going, well, you've got a lad on there and he's covering the Reds, and you've asked him nothing about the Reds. So the big one, Si, soz mate, but are we going to buy a centre-half?
Well, for what it's worth, I think they should be doing everything they can to do so, because it's you know, I was just spoken on another podcast, so I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but I do think that it's not necessarily the effect it has. It doesn't have just affect at centre half. It has an effect in central midfield as well, doesn't it? When you're playing midfielders who are obviously world class midfielders, and I put obviously Fabinho for me, brilliant player, brilliant centre half, brilliant midfielder. But you want him in the middle of midfield, don't you?
Absolutely.
Over the last couple of seasons, when Klopp has selected teams for big games, he's always been the one there that he's always played, hasn't he? So he's been a big loss. Jordan Henderson, for me, he's been outstanding for 2 years now, one of the best midfielders in the world. Other fans still berate him when I say that, but they don't see Liverpool play as much as us and see how influential he is, and absolutely brilliant football. And I thought he's all right at Southampton, but it just sort of, you could tell further up the pitch, him not being there affected the game. So, yeah, that's my view on it. But all the messages coming out of the club are that they're gonna wait for the player that they really want. So, I think it had always been like a long-term strategy before Virgil van Dijk had got his injury, you know, to go and sign a player next summer. I think that's partly down to the availability of the players that they want and the profile of the players they want. They've been stung before by... I know there's been a lot of talk about just go and sign, you know, Papadopoulos or Mustafi or something like that, but they sort of did that with Stephen Corker, and it didn't work. They want to get players that are going to affect the team in the long term. I personally think that they're in an extraordinary situation, aren't they, with Virgil van Dijk, Gomez injured, and Matip not being particularly reliable. I mean, it's very difficult for me to say go and sign a player when you're in the middle of a pandemic and your revenues are down, and me saying, well, you're going to have to go and overspend on the player that you want. Where the balance of the conversation needs to come in is, now, I got panned a little bit for saying this last week, but the reality is the Premier League's so tight at the top, so they can't afford not to fall out of the Champions League, because that would be massive.
Yeah.
That would be, I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but they surely have to think of the consequence of that, because it's so tight. So all those things need to be thought of, but the thing coming out of the club is that they sort of feel that the player that they really want is going to be available in the summer. So that live and die by your decisions, don't you? I mean, it's quite interesting the way the conversation about this is sort of received by I guess the wider fan base and everything else, because I've seen a few people say, oh, well, this is what they said in the summer about Thiago and Jota. It's just not the case at all. That wasn't the case. I mean, Liverpool, from day one, anyone you spoke to at Liverpool saying the same thing. It wasn't a no on Thiago. It was a lot has to happen for that deal to transpire. So it didn't really get reported on very much by the reporters in that sense until it got closer. When the noises out of Germany became clear that A, Thiago wanted to sign, B, Bayern Munich wanted to sell, it makes the deal a lot easier, doesn't it, for Liverpool? That's when the reporting sort of shifted. So nobody at Liverpool misled on that deal. And then Jota caught everybody by surprise, didn't it, to be fair? I mean, the message was obviously that the financial, there is always a financial reality at Liverpool, that they try and run the club in real financial terms. So I think the deal for Jota only accelerated when it became clearer that Ryan Brewster, they'd be able to get the money that they wanted for him. So all these things are connected.
Structure of payments as well seemed to be a big thing. Yeah,
of course, the structure of payments. I mean, a lot of clubs over last summer did that. That's the way Chelsea operated. They signed a lot of players for big fees, but that fee is spread over a number of years, which means that, in this year's accounts, it looks good on them, which Liverpool did. Why wouldn't you do that? And clubs are being more understanding, given the situation that they're in, selling clubs. So, that's the context behind it and the way I see it. If Liverpool were to make a sign in this window, that would be because the landscape around them has changed. I don't think they're in a position at the moment to go and force that landscape because of the economic reality of the club. That's not me saying, the club's in a bad financial state, but the reality is the club expects to make huge losses this year because they haven't been able to get fans into the ground. And if you think that Liverpool just throw money at problems, you haven't been reading or listening to anybody who speaks about the club for the last 5 years, because that's not what FSG do. I keep on returning to the same points. They only signed Alisson Becker for a world record fee and Van Dijk for a world record fee. A, because of the overachievements of the team. B, because the Coutinho was going and they were getting a mega money for him. That made it possible for it to happen. So, at the moment they're not in a position to want to be selling those sorts of players. So, I think they're sitting tight and trying to get the players that are going to come in and improve the team, not just in the short term, but a long term. But if they can get a player who is 21, 22, 23, and he signs for the club for the next 7 years, then that's good. My personal view, again, this is just my view, is that I just think it frustrates me a bit that we've got a great opportunity, haven't we, this season to go and do it again, given the way it's gone. And I'd be it'd be disappointing if you're a Liverpool fan if you sort of see that slip away a little bit because of perhaps a bit of conservatism. But I can understand that thought process, given everything that's going on, given the opportunities that might come around in the summer. So we'll see. You can only sort of judge them in the fullness of time whether that will be the right decision.
Yeah, I mean the clamour and the questions will no doubt continue, and I think Klopp and yourself will have to think of even more ways to say what you've just said over and over again, mate, before this month is over. Well, thanks very much for coming on, Si, this morning, talking about Marine and the Reds. As ever, we do heartily recommend that you go and read Si's stuff on The Athletic. I, for one, really want to read this Marine piece now. I'm looking forward to it. There's been some great coverage of the club the last few days, and I'm sure Si's piece will be among it. Si, nice one, mate. Enjoy the day. Hope everyone out there has enjoyed this. And if you're thinking, well, they didn't talk about Man United much there, yeah, we've got all week for that, and there's going to be loads of it, so look out for it on the Anfield Wrap. Up the Reds.